Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please sing alongside. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Shrunutam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantasto Yabadrani Vidhunoti Suhritsatam Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishmiki Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Thank you, dear devotees, for joining today's class. Even before the class began, there seems to be a little bit of a spoiler on what happens in today's class, as we have some issues with the light. So we will see what happens and how that relates to our class today. So we will be reading the same verse yesterday, but the purport was very long, so we will have the second part of the purport. So do we still sing the verse? No, okay. So, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Verse 16. We are reading the second half of the purport. I will read the translation and then the second half of the purport. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Verse 16. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Bhurishrava, Susharma, Shalya, Jayadratha, and Bahalika all directed their invincible weapons against me. But by his, Lord Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Nrsimhadev, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him. Purport. So the purport has bits about different characters. So yesterday we read until the end of what Prabhupada has to say about Karna. So we will continue from Bhurishrava. Napta or Bhurishrava. Bhurishrava was the son of Somadatta, a member of the Kuru family. His other brother was Shalya. Both the brothers and the father attended the Swayamvar ceremony of Draupadi. All of them appreciated the wonderful strength of Arjuna due to his being the devotee friend of the Lord. And thus Bhurishrava advised the sons of Dhritarashtra not to pick any quarrel or fight with them. All of them also attended the Rajswaya Yajna of Maharaj Yudhishthir. He possessed one Akshauhini regiment of army, cavalry, elephants, and chariots. And all these were employed in the battle of Kurukshetra on behalf of Duryodhana's party. He was counted by Bhima as one of the Yutapatis. In the battle of Kurukshetra, he was especially engaged in a fight with Satyaki, and he killed 10 sons of Satyaki. Later on, Arjuna cut off his hands, and he was ultimately killed by Satyaki. After his death, he merged into the existence of Vishwadev. Trigarta or Susharma. Son of Maharaj Vriddhakshetra, he was the king of Trigartadesh, and he was also present in the Swayamvar ceremony of Draupadi. He was one of the allies of Duryodhana, and he advised Duryodhana to attack Matsyadesh or Darbhanga. During the time of cow stealing in Virat Nagara, he was able to arrest Maharaj Virat, but later Maharaj Virat was released by Bhimsen. In the battle of Kurukshetra, he also fought very valiantly, but at the end he was killed by Arjuna. Jayadratha, another son of Maharaj Vriddhakshetra, he was the king of Sindhudesh, modern Sindh, Pakistan. His wife's name was Dushala. He was also present in the Swayamvar ceremony of Draupadi, and he desired very strongly to have her hand, but he failed in the competition. But since he always sought the opportunity to get in touch with Draupadi, when he was going to marry in the Shalyadesh on the way to Kamyavan, he happened to see Draupadi again and was too much attracted to her. The Pandavas and Draupadi were then in exile after losing their empire in gambling, and Jayadratha thought it wise to send news to Draupadi in an illicit manner through Koti Shashya, one of his associates. Draupadi at once refused vehemently the proposal of Jayadratha, but being so much attracted by the beauty of Draupadi, he tried again and again. Every time he was refused by Draupadi. He tried to take her away forcibly on his chariot, and at first Draupadi gave him a good dashing, and he fell like a cut root tree. But he was not discouraged, and he was able to force Draupadi to sit on the chariot. This incident was seen by Dhaumya Muni, and he strongly protested the action of Jayadratha. He also followed the chariot, and through Dhatrikeya, Dhatriyeka, the matter was brought to the notice of Maharaj Yudhishthir. The Pandavas then attacked the soldiers of Jayadratha and killed them all. And at last, Bhim caught hold of Jayadratha and beat him up very severely, almost dead. But then all but 5 hairs were cut off from his head, and he was taken to all the kings and introduced as the slave of Maharaj Yudhishthir. He was forced to admit himself to be the slave of Maharaj Yudhishthir before all the princely order, and in the same condition he was brought before Maharaj Yudhishthir. Maharaj Yudhishthir was kind enough to order him released, and when he admitted to being a tributary prince under Maharaj Yudhishthir, Queen Draupadi also desired his release. After this incident, he was allowed to return to his country. Being so insulted, he went to Gangotri in the Himalayas and undertook a severe type of penance to please Lord Shiva. He asked his benediction to defeat all the Pandavas, at least one at a time. Then the battle of Kurukshetra began, and he took sides with Duryodhana. In the first day's fight, he was engaged with Maharaj Drupad, then with Virat, and then with Abhimanyu. While Abhimanyu was being killed mercilessly surrounded by 7 great generals, the Pandavas came to his help, but Jayadratha, by the mercy of Lord Shiva, repulsed him with great ability. At this, Arjuna took a vow to kill him, and on hearing this, Jayadratha wanted to leave the war field and asked permission from the Kauravas for this cowardly action. But he was not allowed to do so. On the contrary, he was obliged to fight with Arjuna, and while the fight was going on, Lord Krishna reminded Arjuna that the benedictions of Shiva upon Jayadratha was that whoever would cause his head to fall on the ground would die at once. He therefore advised Arjuna to throw the head of Jayadratha directly onto the lap of his father, who was engaged in penances at the Samanta Panchaka pilgrimage. This was actually done by Arjuna. Jayadratha's father was surprised to see a severed head on his lap, and he at once threw it on the ground. The father immediately died, his forehead being cracked in 7 pieces. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmittam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining today's class. I will present some of the pastimes in a little more detail, and then we can see what lessons we can learn from it and what Prabhupada is trying to say here. Just one small clarification. Although Prabhupada says that Lord Shiva gave Jayadratha the boon that if his head would be cut off, the person killing his head, that person would die themselves. It's just a slight clarification. It's actually Lord Shiva gave Jayadratha the power to hold off the Pandavas except Arjuna only once in his life. And the boon that his head would, whoever chops his head off would die themselves was actually from his father. So his father actually gave him the boon that if anybody kills Jayadratha, that person, or causes his head to be chopped off, that person would be the one who would die themselves. So just a small clarification. So yesterday we saw about a little bit about Karna, and then Karna Prabhu covered about how there may be difficult circumstances that may come upon some devotees, and how they deal with it and how they see it as being. It may or may not be the mercy of the Lord, but it's certainly orchestrated by the Lord for a certain reason, and that is for the good that will be revealed later. So here we read about few characters, that is Susharma, then we saw about Bhurishrava and Jayadratha. So there is, and in this point in the remembrance of Arjuna, he's actually remembering a very, you could say, solemn pastime about the death of his son Abhimanyu, which was very difficult for everyone in the war field. I believe it is day 13 of day 18 in the war. The war took place for 18 days, and day 13 was when Abhimanyu had passed away. So we will look a little bit closely into how valiantly Abhimanyu fought, and why Arjuna was in a way proud of his son's prowess, but also disheartened by the fact that the other Pandavas could not save his life. And we see Prabhupada mentioning here that there were 7 warriors who had created what we call as the Chakravyu, or a certain military formation. And this formation was so formidable that it would it would be like a how do you call, a tank that could shoot on all directions, and it would just continue to move and take over the opponent's army. So it would be like an impenetrable tank that of just warriors that were as powerful as a tank that we would see in today's army and military fights. So these 7 warriors had created a Chakravyuh formation that was at this point in time, day 13 of the army. It is Dronacharya who was the Senapati. He was the chief of the army, and he proposed that they would form this formation and then take a lead in the war. And potentially, if the formation becomes unstoppable, they could even win the war in that very day. So that was their game plan for that day. And so only Arjuna knew how to break through the formation and destroy the Chakravyuh from within. Only he knew how to do both, enter and destroy it. And it is said that when Subhadra had Abhimanyu in her womb, at that time Arjuna was telling her about this, how to enter the formation, and he was also revealing to her how to exit the formation and how to defeat it. But at that point, actually, Mother Subhadra fell asleep. So what happened is the child in the womb, Abhimanyu, only heard how to enter the Chakravyuh, but he does not know how to exit it. And the Pandavas knew that only Arjuna or Abhimanyu could do it. And at that time in the war, the Arjuna was very far away from where they were. So in a sense, we see the paintings by many of the devotees that it seems like it's a pretty big war field, but you had to travel for hours to go from one place to another. That was how large the battlefield was. And by the time Arjuna could come, a lot of damage would have already been made. So the Pandavas that included, so there's Bhishma, Yudhishthir, Nakula, Sahadev, the 4 of them are there. And then they know that only Abhimanyu knows how to enter it, and they also know that he does not know how to exit it. So what their plan is, Abhimanyu would find the weakness in the formation and enter it. So he knows how to exploit that weakness in the military formation, and he would enter it, and they would follow him in very close contact. And as a result, they would all go within and then break the formation, which would prevent, or which would give them the upper hand in that day or in the war in general. So so Yudhishthir is a little hesitant to put Abhimanyu to that, because it's also risky in the war. But Abhimanyu says, it would be my true honor to be of service to you, Maharaj Yudhishthir. And he's actually very thrilled. He's very exhilarated. So when we see, even in the material world, when we see, especially in something little rajasic like sports, if someone has a very exciting, risky game plan, they seem to get a rush of adrenaline so that they can make it happen, kind of rush. So Abhimanyu he's also very young. He's like 16 years old. And he is very thrilled by the opportunity to serve the Pandavas, and that Maharaj Yudhishthir is asking him. So he was already ready to say yes, and he was willing to do it. And so they have that formation ready. So Nakula, Sahadev, Bhimsen, Yudhishthir, and Abhimanyu, they go towards the military formation, and there they face some resistance. Obviously, there'll be other devotees who, other Kaurava army members who would not want this to happen. They don't know whether Abhimanyu knows everything or not, but they see that, okay, the opposite camp has some game plan and they're coming for us. And so Abhimanyu fought valiantly, because there were many other. Karna actually came. Karna started to shoot at them, and Abhimanyu was actually able to hold him off. And Dronacharya kind of smirked that, like father, like son. Arjuna was such a great warrior, and he was always able to outshine Karna. And Abhimanyu is the same, very same. He's also able to hold off Karna, and Karna was a little insulted by that. A 16-year-old child holding him off was a little. He was not defeated or killed, but just that someone could stand up to him and throw his attack off was a little insulting to Karna. But he withdrew, and then Duryodhana and others started coming in, and they were also part of the formation. And Abhimanyu started to go around the formation. As he was shooting, he went 360 degree. He was observing where is the weakness of the formation, because Dronacharya himself was there, and he was the head of the formation. So he knew that the weakness might not be near Dronacharya, because he knows exactly he taught everybody warfare, and he himself taught Arjuna about the formation. So clearly it might not be here. So he went away. He went on the other side of the formation, and he was able to find where the weakness was. And he conveyed back to Yudhishthir Maharaj that the weakness is here. So I will make this maneuver and enter it, and you all follow me. And as he spotted the weakness, and he started shooting arrows to make a breakage and open it up for him to, like, if you see there are a lot of bushes covering a certain cave, we would move the bushes away and then enter the cave. So similarly, he started to exploit the weakness in the arrangement, and he was going to enter. And at that time, Jayadratha came in the way, and Jayadratha had the boon from Lord Shiva. Although we can we can check the facts again later. But what actually happens is Jayadratha has a boon from Lord Shiva that he can hold off the Pandavas except Arjuna only one time in his entire life, and he wanted to use that then and there. So all the other four Pandavas were behind, including Bhimsen. And on any other day, he was no match for even one of them. But today, he was able to hold off the other four. So Abhimanyu entered, but Jayadratha came and blocked that weakness entrance, and then he was able to hold off Yudhishthir, Nakula, Sahadev, and Bhimsen. And Bhim was the most shocked by this, because he would never have imagined that Jayadratha, of all, not devotees, people in the other army, would be able to hold off him, let alone the other three Pandavas there. And Jayadratha actually is able to hold them off, and Abhimanyu is now within the Chakravyuh. And the other Maharathas who are part of the formation are a little puzzled that Abhimanyu is inside. So it should be a piece of cake. We just kill him and we continue on with everything. And then Arjuna would be disheartened by whatever happened, and they were quite happy about it. And so first Duryodhana comes and he starts to shoot at Abhimanyu, but Abhimanyu is able to hold him off, and he's able to push him away, not kill but wound, and move him away and hold off his attack. And Duryodhana is actually surprised. And so Karna then comes in. Karna comes for the second time. Second time he comes and tries to fight with him. Then Dronacharya himself also comes. And Abhimanyu single-handedly is still able to hold him off. Dronacharya is both happy and a little worried that his military formation is, the weakness was exploited, and now there seems to be some way for the opponent to get an upper hand. But he's also amazed that Abhimanyu is able to hold all of them, Maharathas, single-handedly. And then Ashwathama comes in. Dronacharya brings his son, Ashwathama. He's also a little bit on the younger side, but he is a little ruthless in the way he attacks, as we see later on how he kills the Pandavas' sons and so on. So he's very aggressive. He may not have you could say, the military chops, but he's very aggressive. So, and he tried to throw Abhimanyu off balance, but he is also not able to. So although the Chakravyuh formation is still there, they kind of have a small regrouping on. They never expected Abhimanyu to hold them, so hold fort within the Chakravyuh. And so Shalya attacked. Shalya also attacked. Shalya is a very accomplished warrior, and just like how Arjuna had Krishna as his charioteer, Karna had Shalya as his charioteer later on in the war. And right now they are in a position where Shalya and his son and his brother Madra is also killed. So Shalya is actually shocked that his brother, who's such a great warrior, Shalya himself is a very great warrior. His brother is also a very good warrior, and he was killed by Abhimanyu. So now they are in a kind of a fix. So then the one of the bad influences for the greater bad influences, Shakuni, is also there. So Shakuni tells that, look, we really need to kill as many of the opponents as possible. So we really need to sort this out quickly. So we just resort to unfair means, and many warriors should fight Abhimanyu. And Dronacharya is a little hesitant. So Duryodhana tells Dronacharya that he knows that Dronacharya was a little pleased by Abhimanyu's prowess. And so Duryodhana kind of chides him and says, see, you are happy about him, you're not fighting to your best ability. You are our only hope. He first chides him, and then he feels like if Dronacharya is insulted, or if he feels like if he feels like he was offended, he may not fight. So he says, okay, but you are our only hope, and there is no other way for us to fight. And he tells Karna also, Karna, you also tell. Actually, Karna does not see eye to eye with Dronacharya and Bhishma Dev. So Dronacharya, because Dronacharya rejected him from his academy, and he went to Parshuram and learned all of the arts and everything. So Dronacharya, even Karna was, after Duryodhana poked him and told, you also ask, then Dronacharya might say, okay. He was willing to be a little bit humble, and he said to Dronacharya, yes, Dronacharya, you are a Senapati. Whatever you say, we are willing to do. Please help us out of this situation. So he was also willing to do it. It may seem a little dishonest, just to get something done, but Karna was willing to do it. And then Dronacharya, he doesn't want to do it, but then he feels like this is an emergency situation. So he tells 3 warriors. He tells Kritavarman. Kritavarman was he learned the military arts alongside Arjuna, or used Arjuna as his mentor also. So he was actually part of the Narayan Sena. But because Narayan Sena was fighting on the side of Duryodhan, he had to follow along whatever they say. So Kritavarman is very good friends with Arjuna. But Dronacharya told him one thing to do. So he told Karna that you hold off Abhimanyu's chariot. And so the exact thing is, Karna was supposed to hold off the bow and the reins of the chariot of Abhimanyu. Ashwatthama was to kill the charioteer, and Kritavarman was to kill the horses. So this was the task he gave to them, the 3 of them. So out of the 7 Maharathas who are there, 3 of them are Kritavarman, Ashwatthama, and Karna. And they had to 3 versus 1. And then first Karna cuts the reins of the chariot. That is what the charioteer has. And then he also breaks the chariot. And then Ashwatthama kills the charioteer. And then Kritavarma kills the horses. And now Abhimanyu is just by himself. He doesn't have, and the bow is also taken away by Karna. So Karna shoots the bow off of his hand. So he's by himself, just by himself, and he has only his shield on him. And then he sees a sword that's fallen down. So he takes that sword and tries to hold them off single-handedly. And now we have Dronacharya also joining the battle. So it's like 4v1. And after that, it is said that Duryodhana also joined in, and Kritavarman. So these 5 great Maharathas are charging towards him. But with the sword, he was still able to hold them off. And then Duryodhana actually chops the sword off. And then the sword also falls. Now he has nothing except his shield. And then they try to get the shield off. That is also gone. So he is now bare by himself, which is completely against Kshatriya Dharma, to fight against someone who has no way to protect them, or is in no position to wield a weapon to fight them. But they're still fighting with him. So then he remembered what had happened in day 5 of the war, when Bhishma Dev, when Krishna lifted the wheel to kill Bhishma Dev. So he sees his chariot's wheel there. So he takes that wheel. It's a very heavy item, but 16-year-old, he carries it, wields it, and then throws all of them off with that single wheel. So he does not give up at all. Single-handedly, he's able to do all of this, and everybody are shocked by what is happening. And then we have Drona, Karna. Then Dushasan's son Durjay comes in. So Dushasan is also one of the 7 Maharathas who are there, and even he was held off in the war. Then he sends his son Durjay, who's about similar age as Abhimanyu. And Durjay comes in his chariot with bow and arrow and also a sword, and tries to fight with Abhimanyu. All the others are a little tired and thrown off, and Abhimanyu is still fighting with Durjay. Durjay is like a villain with full health, and Abhimanyu is like almost no health, but he's still fighting. Then he finds a mace that's on the floor, and he jumps and comes to break Dushasan's chariot. And he breaks Dushasan's chariot. And Durjay sees that his father's chariot is broken. But just as he was about to hit the chariot, Dushasan jumped off the chariot. Only the chariot broke. Dushasan was like just fallen down like that. Then Durjay comes again, and then he fights mace versus a charioteer with bow and arrow and everything. But still Abhimanyu is able to fight the chariot off. He breaks everything, and they come even Steven. Both of them with their mace. They're fighting with each other, pounding each other. Then both their maces also break, and then they're fighting hand to hand combat. And then after that, there was another mace that was fallen down. So Durjay takes that and then smashes it on Abhimanyu's skull, and then it kind of cracks, and that's when Abhimanyu passes away. And then it's also said when Abhimanyu was dead, he still had a smile on his face and he had no regret. But it was he fought so valiantly that the main army generals of the opposite camp were uh, astonished as to how a small boy could fight like that. And then everybody started blowing their conch shells. And although Arjuna could not hear it because he was farther away, the Pandavas heard it and they were held back by Jayadratha. And then they knew what had happened. Why would they blow the conch shell of victory, even though it's not yet evening or something like that? They knew that, okay, so whatever we did not want happened, and there's nothing much. I mean, we don't know what to do. And actually, Yudhishthir is heartbroken at that point of time because he was the one who made the plan for them to go there, and he felt he was responsible for the death of Abhimanyu, and he was burdened with guilt. Actually, Yudhishthir is guilty for being guilty, even though it is not his fault. But at this point of time, he was overwhelmed with guilt because he knew it was his fault. And then he could say, crestfallen at that point of time. And soon it was the end of the day's war. And then they retreat back, and Yudhishthir is inconsolable. Nobody could console him there. And then Vyasadeva himself, Krishna had to send Vyasadeva there, and Vyasadeva gave counsel to Yudhishthir. He spoke philosophy because Yudhishthir finds comfort in philosophy. So Vyasadeva told him that death is inevitable, and he explains although all of those fighting actions could not be seen by all the Pandavas because they themselves were fighting, Vyasadeva himself has written the Mahabharata, so he knows exactly what has happened. So he conveys the glories of Abhimanyu and how he single-handedly held off so many Maharathas and fought valiantly. And then he tells him that because of this, he would have attained a higher abode. So you don't have to worry about that. And in one sense, Yudhishthir was calmed down, but he had a very difficult task to do next, which was to inform Arjuna when he comes. So Arjuna knows that there was a the Chakravyuh that was formulated, but he knew only he and Abhimanyu knew how to enter it. So when he came back after the day's fighting, he saw that nobody was sitting on the seat of Abhimanyu. So he already guessed what must have happened, and then he's waiting for Yudhishthir to tell him. And Yudhishthir is a you swallow hard when you have to say something difficult. It's a very difficult conversation to have. So he tells Arjuna, and Arjuna is enraged, and nobody would think that Arjuna would be so enraged. And he blasts out at the Pandavas. He asks them, "Are your weapons bangles? Are they just toys that you use to show to everybody that you can fight? You could not protect my 16-year-old son. See how valiantly he's fought." And he starts, blasting all of them. And that time Krishna comes to his side, and that is one of the main points of mentioning this verse without exactly mentioning the death of Abhimanyu, because it hurt Arjuna a lot. So if you see in this verse purport, it only mentions, sorry, the verse translation, it only mentions how Narsimadev was unaffected by the weapons. Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Narsimadev, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him. Was for him to remember that Krishna was there for him when he needed him the most, and Krishna gave him good counsel at that point of time. He didn't want to remember Abhimanyu's death in that sense. So this is exactly what Krishna told Arjuna. Adversity comes upon everyone in this world, both the wise and the unwise. The difference is that the wise act in ways that decreases the distress, whereas the unwise act in ways that increases it. Don't speak words that increase their affliction. And he tells Krishna tells Arjuna that you look at your brothers; they themselves are already crestfallen. I've already spoken the Bhagavad Gita to you. He didn't say that, but he knows that Arjuna knows. He's wise. He understands that in war, many things like this can happen, and that he must hold his calm and nerve in this point of time and channelize whatever vengefulness he has or whatever anger he has. Just like how Hanuman, when he was coming back from Lanka, he used his anger in the Lord's service by setting entire Lanka on fire. So, and Arjuna also has Hanuman on his chariot. So Arjuna must channel his anger in a productive manner. So then Arjuna takes the vow that before the nightfall of next day, before the end of war next day, Jayadratha is a dead man. And then he roars, and then all of them blow their conch shells. And the Kaurava army could hear the conch shells, and they were like, they were supposed to be crying and sad. How are they blowing their conch shells? They're a little surprised. And then news travels fast, even without social media or TikTok there. So the Kaurava army realized that Arjuna has taken a vow that Jayadratha will be a dead man the next day. So next, what happens is then Jayadratha, as we see in today's purport, Jayadratha was willing to run away because he was afraid. He knew there was no way he couldn't even stand one Kaurava, and he's already used the power that Lord Shiva had given him. So he's willing to run away. And then Dronacharya and Duryodhana scold him and then tell him that we must use this to our advantage. They also know that his father had given him the boon that if his head was chopped off, that person would die. So what they did was they had a military formation. It said it was 21 miles wide and 42 miles deep. And then there was Jayadratha at the very end. So it was like basically a whole parliament building of warriors protecting Jayadratha. And it was headed by Dronacharya, Dushasana, all of the Maharathas on the front. And Jayadratha was a little calm because the goal of the entire army or those many Akshonis was to protect him. So he felt, okay, maybe nothing will happen to me. And Dronacharya's plan was, it was a very formidable plan. And Dronacharya knew that even if Arjuna were to kill him, Arjuna himself might die. So the advantage is ours. Dronacharya, everybody knew, and they were also quite, pumped up to fight the war. And that day, nobody had seen Arjuna in that amount of rage. Even Krishna was impressed by the way Arjuna was fighting. And Arjuna was like a impenetrable force. So first, when Duryodhana came to fight Arjuna, and Duryodhana was, very mawkishly overconfident because Dronacharya had given him an impenetrable shield, which meant none of Arjuna's arrows could penetrate and hit him, but he can keep shooting at Arjuna. So he had a shield like that, and he just started shooting at Arjuna's chariot, and he was engaging in combat. And Arjuna was surprised that none of his arrows could move through it. And so Krishna tells him that you find his weakness. There is one imperfection in this shield. You need to exploit that. And then Arjuna keeps observing, and then it's a pretty intense fight. And he observes that whenever there's something moving near his wrists or knuckles, Duryodhana's knuckles, he would withdraw it because there was one hole in the shield near his knuckles. When he shoots, the arrow goes like this, right? So there was a small opening there for the arrows to go through the shield. And Arjuna then observes that. And then he is the best at archery. So he aims it straight through that opening. And it goes straight through and hits the knuckles and breaks them off. So the arrow comes and breaks his knuckles off. And then Duryodhana cannot withstand the pain. And then they move forward. So Arjuna is willing to finish the fight there, but he knows that Bhimsen wants to kill all of the Kaurava, so he lets him, and Krishna tells Arjuna, "You don't worry about perfect. Just finish the duty that you have for today, because it's a race against time. Before evening, if Jayadratha is not killed, Arjuna would enter fire and die. So this is a fight against time, not for perfection and everything." And so then Dronacharya himself comes and he holds off Arjuna and they fight. It's eye to eye. It's a very equal fight. Dronacharya, the one who taught Arjuna, versus himself, and they use very many mystic weapons and different weapons, and they are at an impasse. It's equal. And then Krishna tells Arjuna that you throw a distraction and then throw Dronacharya a little off, and then we will go quickly. And as a result, what happens is, again, Arjuna throws off a separate arrow, and then that throws the chariot off balance a little bit, Dronacharya's chariot. And by the time Dronacharya comes back to finish the attack, Arjuna Krishna powers through the chariot, and then they move away. And Dronacharya just he calls out, Arjuna, you're a coward. You're running away from a fight. And then Krishna tells Arjuna, you don't worry about everything. We have a task to do today, and we are racing against time, against the using the Lord Himself is time, and we are racing against time with the Lord, who's the Lord of the time. And then they go through, and then there are many such small battles that happen. And one battle that's mentioned here also happens in this, that is Bhurishrava. So Bhurishrava was the son of Somadatta, a member of the Kuru family, and he was actually a devotee of the Lord, but he was fighting on Duryodhana's camp. So Bhurishrava is a very good warrior, and he's also a devotee of the Lord. And here we see, as Arjuna goes there, Yudhishthira tells Bhim, and he also tells Satyaki, as we see in today's purport also. He tells Satyaki and Bhimsen to go and assist Arjuna. So basically, it would be where Satyaki and Bhimsen would hold off anyone coming in Arjuna's way, so Arjuna can fight and penetrate through. So they would shield him in that sense, and Arjuna could continue his conquest. And so Satyaki is also a very accomplished warrior, but actually Arjuna tells Satyaki to be by the side of Yudhishthira Maharaj to protect him, because Dronacharya wanted to kill Yudhishthira, right? So Satyaki was there to protect Yudhishthira Maharaj, and Bhimsen was also there. So Yudhishthira tells him that Arjuna is more important at this point of time. I have Bhimsen, Nakula, Sahadev by my side. You go and assist. And it was also the wish of Satyaki to be of service to Arjuna. So Satyaki happily goes away. And same for Bhimsen. Both of them go. They hold off the army who are trying to kind of waste Arjuna's time. And then Arjuna continues to go. Krishna and Arjuna continue to go. And at this point in time, there is Bhurishrava who comes. And Satyaki fights Bhurishrava. And Bhimsen fights some other warriors. And it's a very equal match between Bhurishrava and Satyaki. And Arjuna is still fighting something on the side. And then they come to a point similar to what we were discussing, where it's hand-to-hand combat and wrestling. And at that time, Bhurishrava beats Satyaki a lot. Like, he pounds him up, and he's rendered senseless, unconscious. And so one final punch, and Satyaki is unconscious. Then Krishna knows, obviously he knows everything that's happening. So he tells Arjuna, there's no rearview mirror in the chariot, but he tells, look back, your good friend Satyaki is in trouble. Don't you think you need to help him? And then Arjuna looks back and he sees Bhurishrava taking a sword, and he's going to slay Satyaki. And then Arjuna shoots an arrow, and then it chops off Bhurishrava's hands. So we see in the purport as well, as Prabhupada is saying. And then his hand with the sword falls off. And then there's a fountain of blood from his arm is chopped off. And then Bhurishrava calls out to Arjuna and says, you are such an egregious warrior. By taking the association of Krishna, you started fighting by unfair means. And he starts telling Arjuna. And Arjuna says that, so he tells in a somewhat of a sarcastic tone, so the person who was going to slay someone who was unconscious and not willing to fight, was he a very good warrior? Was he following the rules of war? So what I did was fair, if what you were going to do was fair. And then Bhurishrava realizes that, okay, Arjuna is right. And he's also a devotee of the Lord, and he agrees. And so he makes a bed of arrows, and he sits on that bed of arrows, just a few arrows, and he sits like how I'm sitting on the soft asana. He sat on the arrows, and he was meditating, looking at Parthasarathi, Krishna. And he was meditating on the Lord. And then by that time, Satyaki is awakened. And as he was seeing the Lord, he closed his eyes in deep meditation, and he went into a trance. And then Arjuna and Krishna continue on. They know that he has taken the Lord in his mind, and his life is complete. He's in samadhi state at that point of time. And then what happens is, Satyaki wakes up, and he sees Bhurishrava just sitting there, no weapon, nothing, and he slays he cuts Bhurishrava's skull off. And then all the Kauravas are saying, they kind of curse Satyaki, that Bhurishrava did not kill you, and he was in deep meditation, yet you choose to do this unjust act. And everybody were cursing Satyaki. And then Satyaki tells that actually there was a fight between Satyaki's father, whose name is Singhi, and Bhurishrava's father, who is Somadatta. So they had actually fought before, and uh, Somadatta had won the fight against Sini. So yeah, so Sini defeated Somadatta actually. Yeah, Sini defeated Somadatta, and then he had some revenge because of that. As a result, now Satyaki, Sini's son, is killing Bhurishrava, and he said this was to sort that out. It's like a previous generation fight. They're bringing it in here, so it is not unfair and everything, and everybody are okay with it. And then they go in. I will not tell any more details. I will just go back to the main part. So what happens is now Jayadratha is within vision, and Krishna knows that it is about to be sunset. So Arjuna has to go quickly, and he rushes the chariot through, and they hold everybody off, and then Jayadratha is within vision. And then what is that? Yeah. Now Krishna remembers. I mean, obviously Krishna knows. Krishna remembers that if Jayadratha is killed at this point in time, then whoever kills him, that person will be dead. So he wants to tell Arjuna that he needs to do it in a certain way that Arjuna is not the one who takes the head off of him. It's somebody else who does it. But he will be responsible for killing him in that sense. So it's a two birds with one stone. He wants to do that. And as they go, he realizes that the more formidable allies were ready to waste his time there. And there was not much time for him to fight or go there. So Arjuna was also losing a little bit of determination at that point of time. And then what Krishna does is he takes his Sudarshan Chakra and covers the sun, and he creates a instantaneous eclipse. I was telling you, like, we were turning off the light and turning it on. So he creates an instantaneous eclipse, and everybody thinks, okay, this is the end of the war. And then Jayadratha, as though he were a very brave soul, he jumps up and he scoffs at Arjuna. Arjuna, I will light the fire. You please enter and you please die. And he speaks as though he fought the war and everything, but he was nicely sitting at the very end. And then what happens is and Jayadratha is he's laughing and he's very happy, and all the Kauravas are a little pumped up that Arjuna is no more, or Arjuna is going to be no more, and they reduce their guard. And then Krishna tells Arjuna, on my command, shoot the Brahmastra straight at Jayadratha, such a way that his his head is off the neck, but then it should fall on his father who's in the Himalayas. There's a Samanta Panchaka hill, mountains, and over there, his father should be the one to open the head off, and then his father will die. Krishna conveys to Arjuna. Arjuna is a little hesitant because this is not warfare; it's evening, right? I mean, and they're lower their guard, so it's not fair. And Krishna tells Arjuna that at this point in time, you need to understand that they had a 7v1 and killed Abhimanyu, and they must not be forgiven. So whatever they have done, they will get back the fate that they deserve. So you must do this. And so Arjuna takes the Brahmastra and is ready to shoot. And then Krishna removes the Sudarshan Chakra, and there's still some rays of sunlight that are still incoming. And then everybody are shocked that suddenly it's all bright again. And then Arjuna shoots and it slices through. The head is off, but not exactly fully off. And then it takes the body of Jayadratha with the head straight to his father's lap, who's meditating. And then the head falls here. And then obviously anybody would be amazed if they see a severed head fall on their thing, and he throws them off. At that time, it's completely off the body. And so his father himself dies, and then the curse is taken away. And this is how Jayadratha was killed. And it was a very valiant day of fighting. Although I'm only halfway done through my class and we are out of time, I just wanted to maybe 5 more minutes. So the main point I wanted to cover through this class was the fact that Krishna tests all of his devotees in very serious ways, and he tests them, especially if you see the case of Bali Maharaj, and in this case Arjuna, he tests them to an extent that may seem a little extreme at points in time. But there's one beautiful thing that Gaurganda Maharaj mentions in his class, which I wanted to cover today. So if you see 8, 22, 22 chapter, 29 and 30th verse, I'll just quickly read the translation. Although bereft of his riches, fallen from his original position, defeated and arrested by his enemies, rebuked and deserted by his relatives and friends, although suffering the pain of being bound and although rebuked and cursed by his spiritual master, Bali Maharaj, being fixed in his vow, did not give up his truthfulness. It was certainly with pretension that I, that is Krishna, Vamanadev, spoke about religious principles, but he did not give up religious principles, for he is true to his word. And the last line of the purport is, the Lord is so kind to his devotee that when severely testing him, the Lord gives him the necessary strength to be tolerant and continue to remain a glorious devotee. So, in this case, we see, although Krishna had already reduced the lifespan of all the Kauravas, he wanted Arjuna to get the glory of being the one to be responsible for winning the war. So he wanted to give the fame and glory to his devotee, same as for Bali Maharaj. Although he took away everything that Bali Maharaj had, all of the glory goes to Bali Maharaj for his sacrifice. He's known as a Mahajan because of his being true to his word, and the Lord actually gave him the strength to tolerate what had happened. And the same we see here in this case. Arjuna had to tolerate the death of Abhimanyu, and instead he used it to fuel his fire uh, to kill Jayadratha, and in that sense show a completely new way of fighting with that much aggression and anger, and he was never tired the entire day. And this actually threw off the entire Kaurava army. That was day 14 of the war, and then there were only 4 more days, and then the Pandavas eventually win the war. And it goes to show that tolerance is something that is somewhat difficult, especially when we need it the most. When we don't need it the most, and when Krishna is not testing us, tolerance is very easy. But when Krishna puts us through the test, he also gives the necessary strength. But one must have the tolerance and forbearance to identify that Krishna has given me the strength, and this is also a test, and I must get through it or grow through it. Not just go through it, grow through it. And actually, I wanted to say some verses, but I don't think we have much time. I just want to glorify the tolerance of a tree, because that is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us, Taro Riva Sahishnuna. So he says that we must be as tolerant as a tree, because the tree is so tolerant and forgiving that even though it has such sweet fruits, it itself never tastes those fruits and instead gives it to others. And moreover, if someone were to pluck the fruits or throw stones and chop the tree off, it's still willing to give that same person shade. When, let's say, somebody were to chop the tree, and let's say some part of the tree is still remaining, it still gives shade to the same woodcutter to take rest under its shade. And many people throw stones at trees to get the fruits if it's too high. Although it accepts the stones, it still gives the fruit all for free and never accepts the fruit for itself. And there's the woodpecker. All of you know about the woodpecker. It keeps pecking the wood and makes a hole in it, and it takes shelter within that same, and the tree gives it shelter within itself, even though the woodpecker is just uh, you know taking it for its own needs. And so we must all be like the tree. Krishna himself says, etava janma safalyam dehinam ihadeshu pranay arthe dhiya vacha shreya achanam sada. He says, prana, artha, dhiya, vacha. All of these must be given to given in the service of others. Paropkarartham idam shariram. We must use our body for paropkar, for the good for others, and be as tolerant as the tree. Etava janma safalyam dehinam ihadeshu. Dehinam ihadeshu. It gives its own body for the service of other bodies. That's what the tree is. It's the Murtiman Swarup of tolerance and forbearance and forgiving. So we must all try to cultivate these qualities. And also, one other thing Gaurapanda Maharaj says that I actually wanted to cover, although I would have covered it in a more palatable and better manner, I'm just rushing it through to finish in time, is that when tests and difficulties come upon us, our tolerance is tested, but our true motivation to practice bhakti is tested even more. So Gaurapanda Maharaj says, when you are tested, you really see if you're there in Krishna's movement or mission, whether you're there for some ulterior motive. It may be subtle, it may be subtle fame, it could be, speaking eloquently, it could be something like fame and everything, which may be covered by other factors. And only when you're tested seriously will you really realize what you really want. So when Bali Maharaj was tested to that extent, he gave up the word of his own spiritual master. And that was the real test. All of the other things were external. His own guru, although that was also orchestrated by the Lord, he was willing to even give up his guru's word to fulfill his promise to the Lord, even though he knew that the Lord was acting with pretension, Vamanadev. And that was the true test to see if he really wanted the riches or follows Guru's order, or did he want to give it up. So we have na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamiye mama janmani janmanishwari bhavatat bhakti rahaitu kitu. It's very easy to say this. I certainly don't internalize or embody this verse, but this verse must come through when you need it the most. And there are many such verses. There is in the 11, 14, 14, which is very beautiful. I don't know why it is not in that 11th, 12th canto. 11, 14, 14 verse is not there. It says, Na parameshtyam, na mahendra dishnyam, na sarvabhaumam, na rasadhipatyam, na yoga siddhir apunarbhavava, mai arpita mechati mad vinanyat. So Krishna tells Uddhava, who is a pure devotee. He says, Na parameshtyam, not the abode of Brahma, na mahendra dishnyam, maha indra, not Indra's abode, no sarvabhauma, not all of the riches of the world, no rasadhipatyam, not all of the jewels and wealth and everything, no yoga siddhi, not yoga siddhi, all of the mystic perfections, no yoga siddhi, apunarbhavama, no liberation. All of these are the murtiman swarup, all of the are lakshana, or all of these are the indicators that these are things that one devotee must not ask for. And these are the exact words that are spoken in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam by Vritrasura. He says the exact same word to word. Only thing, instead of Mahendra, instead of Lord Brahma's abode, he says Dhruva Loka, which is actually factually even correct, because Dhruva Loka was better than the. It's I think 6:11:25. It's one of the most important verses from Vritrasura's prayers, and he says word to word exactly what Krishna says. So this goes to show that our ulterior motives and what we really want from Krishna consciousness is only shown in times of difficulty. And this time, we see that although his son was killed, Arjuna was still willing to do what the Lord wanted, that is to fight in the war and win, even at the expense of his son's death, which goes to show he was really Nimitta Matram Bhava Sarvyasachi. He was really an instrument in the Lord's service. So with that, I would like to conclude today's class. Thank you very much to everybody. I'm sorry I went a little over time. I should have calculated it better and made a better presentation. The last few points that I mentioned may seem to be a little hurried and may not be as coherent as I would have liked, but please forgive me, and I'm still learning from all of you. Thank you very much.
So much. Maybe we can take reflections offline and they can share on the group if anybody has any questions.
Thank you for joining, dear devotees. Hare Krishna.